also have unintended impacts, such as displacement of fisheries and adverse shift in fishing methods. So therefore we recommend exploring the further application of existing tools to achieve the recreational fisheries rather than introducing a new tool in an MPA framework. Specific proposals for the recreational fishing parks in the Hauraki Gulf, and also the other one was the Marlborough Sands, but this one, we recommend that these two specific proposals, that they should follow a proper consultation process and also take into account the existing initiatives such as the sea change projects, which Paul Beverley just introduced to you. And these proposals should also include an assessment of the benefits and also the impacts on existing and future users in line with the proposed framework in the consultation document. So kind of summarizing this, the proposal should not circumvent the new processes that the proposed act sets out to establish. Some other submission points, I've summarized this on this slide. We recommend extending the new act to include the EEZ, so not only out to 12 nautical miles. This would avoid the need for new legislation to be developed when new information becomes available, and would also acknowledge the fact that species cross the arbitrary boundaries between the territorial sea and the EEZ. We got qualified support for collaborative and board of inquiry establishment processes, and qualified support is because we made some comments about the collaborative process that, for example, local authorities at this stage are not specifically mentioned as being part of that process. Board of inquiry process could be an efficient way to establish new MPAs, but could also limit the time for stakeholders and iwi to provide input, so therefore qualified support. We recommend not to transition the existing tools into the new framework. Again, that would create a lot of complexity and overlap, and also transitioning the existing tools may have an impact on existing legislative frameworks, such as the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park Act. We acknowledge the importance of enforcement, and also we support regular monitoring. But we also consider that these efforts and costs related to that, so we recommend to explore synergies between agencies to reduce costs, and also, once you've done your review, include specific criteria to guide the outcomes of that review. That was my presentation. Thank you.
Question, well, this went out to councillors from Mr. Kimpton as in its entirety, so you've had the submission for a while, and it's also been to the local boards, and iwi, you've done iwi consultation as well. So questions is Councillor Wayne Walker.
Yeah, first of all I'd just like to note a few of the points that were made by the officers in the general overview. I'll just pluck a few out. Jurisdictional overlap, complexity, duplication of effort, increased coordination costs and confusion. I'll reduce that further to some simple words. This process is dumb, it's expensive, it's tricky, it's messy, and it doesn't work. Frankly, it's a waste of time, and we should kick it for touch. We've got a sea change process that's underway. That should flow through on its course, and frankly, in my view, we've got better things to do now. We've got existing tools, that's indicated. They need enforcement, monitoring and money, and they're not being provided. So I've just endeavoured to simplify things, Mr. Chair. We need to kick this for touch.
To support the submission then?
Well, I don't think they go far enough,
okay,
and are blunt enough.
It covers the points that you've, in general.
In general.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Fletcher?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Naturally, the purpose here is something that I support, but I just asked Mr. Kimpton, where I'm involved with the Hauraki Gulf Forum. I note that we've got Tim Hyam here today. Tim, I defer to as someone who has had a very strong interest in this for the 5 or 6 years that I've been on the council. I wonder whether it would be possible to pose a couple of questions to him. Is that, Mr. Chairman, going to be possible? Because I think drawing on the knowledge that he has of the Hauraki Gulf, the conundrum for some of us is, while we welcome progress, the question is the progress going to be achieved faster? Because we've had an awful lot of hui and not much dui on improving the Hauraki Gulf. Is the process going to be faster actually reviewing the Hauraki Gulf legislation, the standalone legislation, or is it going to give greater progress through this new act? So I just wonder whether or not you would indulge me in being able to just ask Mr. Hyam for some guidance so that I can have comfort in the way that we're going to proceed. This is an issue that I've followed very, very closely over 25 years, and I'm really interested in the detail of it.
Well, you have our officers here, Councillor Fletcher, and you know you've had this submission already for your information. So I think it would be improper if we started just picking people out of the audience to talk. And so if you've got questions,
Mr. Chairman,
No,
the
I'm
greatest
just-
of respect to your chairmanship, this is the Chief Executive Officer for the Hauraki Gulf Forum who has been that person for, I'd just like to know whether he supports this.
well, I'm saying if you ask your officers the questions and just see, because I mean, I think if you start extending it to other people in the audience, it becomes difficult for me as the chair.
Why is he
So,
anyway?
if you've got questions, if you
So
could
may I ask then, through the officers that we do have present,
Yes.
can you give me the assurance that Tim Hyam has fully supported this and has not put forward any other option?
I'd like to comment to that. We have prepared an Auckland Council-wide submission, and Tim Hyam has been given opportunities to provide input in this council submission. Yeah, I think, I can't answer the question specifically because he needs to be able to answer the question himself if he fully supports it. I have had feedback from him which were included in the draft submission. So yeah, he's been involved in this submission, in preparing this draft submission.
Thank you. Councillor Webster.
Yes, thank you. Look, I was briefed on this by the Minister, as was Paul Beverley and Paul Majuri before Christmas. And I said to the Minister then, you're actually going to confuse and gazump the sea change. And I think if this is our submission, I think it needs to be certainly much more upfront that we are doing a marine spatial plan for the Hauraki Gulf, that we do have a marine, the Hauraki Marine Protection Act, as Councillor Fletcher was saying. I know it's in the submission, but this is Auckland's submission to the Minister, and I think those facts need to be in the introduction and much more upfront than finding it on page 8 of the submission as a sentence. I think we need to be saying that we are working collaboratively. If this goes ahead, it's just going to confuse an awful lot of people that are already involved in the sea change process. And I don't think we make that clear enough in our submission. So I would like to see that brought out of page 8 of 16 and put somewhere in the front that we're going through this process, that this is going to confuse everybody. We've got recreational fishers involved in the sea change process. We've got iwi involved. Well, you heard from Paul before, and I don't think in our submission we make enough of that. So I'd like to see that brought much more to the front.
Officers, Mr. Holland, is that a reasonable request to?
Yes, we
beef
can.
that up?
Through the chair, yes, we can put that. We
As
can
well
beef
as
that up
the,
and put that in
as well as the
front.
Act that, I mean,
Yes.
Auckland, this is a submission for the whole of New Zealand, but this is Auckland's submission, so we need to, thank you.
I can understand that, Councillor. That is, you're right. That is legislation for the whole of the country.
Yep.
We are mindful of that, and there's a whole sort of process that we're working with, trying to work with the ministry as well on this. And I know also through the sea change process that we've made quite clear to the minister that that this is from the sea change SWG. They've made it quite clear about the problems that this causes. So it is in line with what the sea change is saying, but we can definitely put that in there.
And further to that, Mr Chair, I'm really surprised because, I mean, the Department of Conservation and MPI are on the sea change process.
Okay. Councillor Casey?
Well, just to echo some of the remarks of my colleague, Councillor Walker, when I read this, I was very unclear about the whole idea of petroleum and mineral activity. I'm still unclear. From your table, it looks like only one is a no and the rest are maybes. And that's, the words in our submission on that horrified me. And I'll read you them out. It's on our page 27. Auckland Council would query the likelihood that the full range of mining applications would be granted in areas where fishing restrictions had been introduced to protect the seabed. I think that needs to be just a little bit stronger. That's got no strength at all for our position, which is we'd be horrified if that happened.
Mr Holland, can you comment on
Okay,
that?
if you would like, if it's through the chair, if that's the desire of the committee, then we can make that a lot stronger.
Just if, I mean, I asked my council colleagues to look at the table on page, our page 17. In particular, look at petroleum and mineral activity. It's that middle line, and there's one tick and three crosses. Or there's three ticks and one cross. And I got the feeling we've got a government who wants to explore the seabed, and at the same time, this legislation is coming through, and it's full of holes.
Yeah, yes, through the chair. That's one of the problems that we see with this, and it's why we're kind of asking them to sort of go back and have a look at this. This needs a lot more thought and a lot more work done to it, and through a number of facets. And it's something that we would like to help them with as well. Those are the overtures that we'll be making.
We can help them, but also put a stronger position of what we don't want to see happen, and that would be one of them, for me.
We'll pick that up.
If it's through the committee, yes, absolutely.
And then we've got Wilcox.
Thank you. On reading your report, one of the things I'm struggling to come to grips with is, especially in Rodney, where the fishing industry is quite a large employer. I'm trying to understand what our kaupapa is with regards to that, because this obviously will place more pressure on our fishing industry. Lee Fisheries is the largest employer in Rodney, in Lee, in that area. What have we kind of come to some discussion on that to point out to the government about this?
We haven't, through the chair, we haven't gone through those sorts of levels of detail, identifying exactly where that's going to be impacting on specific industries. What we've said is that's going to cause us confusion. So that's why we think going back and having a look at this legislation from a sort of reduction is looking at the existing legislation to see what we can do to make the changes that are from the problems that are being caused currently. So if there's something, well, I'll see if you've got something.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Our submission says that those specific proposals for the Hauraki Gulf should include an assessment of what the effects are going to be. And we provided some information that you could use in this assessment, and part of that is related to fisheries.
Yeah, I'd like to see something a bit stronger, because Lee is a big employer, and also it places our fishing people at risk if they've got to go out way past the barrier. I mean, we're talking about Snapper 1 here. So, I mean, I'm just really concerned that there's two issues here. What's the dollar effect it's going to have on a small community like Lee and the surrounding area, of which many are Māori who work in that factory. And the second thing is then it places an extra emphasis on them having to go further to get Snapper 1 quota.
Yeah, that's exactly what we asked the government to do, to provide that assessment.
Yeah. So through the chair, are you asking us to beef up that specific area and to say something about the Lee fishery and the effect on mana whenua of the area?
Well, I think on the fishing industry in general, there is also Sandfords down here, down below here. But I mean, Lee especially will be vulnerable.
some extra words in there in that relation to that one?
Yes, we can do that. And how would you like us to make sure that it's signed off? Do we work through a small group?
Work through, for me, as
For yourself?
chair.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do that through the Chairman, thank you.
And Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't had that much time to focus on this new act, but I am concerned there is the Orwellian theme of much modern legislation coming from neoliberal governments. It talks about marine protected areas at least, which is encouraging, but it does in effect repeal the wonderful world-leading Marine Reserves Act of 1971. And that act, even though there's been relatively few marine reserves, has been enormously effective. And I would hate to see the provisions of that